before we get into this, I am going to say this. This is obviously going to turn into a poll that we put up on our community page on our YouTube channel, but I am intentionally, for the purposes of the poll, intentionally throwing out anything that has to deal with Jaromir Jagr. And that's everything involved. That's the jersey retirement, and it's wholesome. It's the picture of the skyline that week. It's the bobblehead saga. It's the mullets during warmups. It's Jagr's curtain call, which I think if you needed to condense the best moment, the best 5 to 10 seconds, it's Jagr's curtain call. But because that is going to blow away anything else we put in a poll, we're just going to flat out say that that was the top moment for the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2024. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. We were discussing then that strap in, Penguins fans, because that jersey retirement is going to be the last bright spot of that season. Turned out to not be. I mean, they did go on a decent run at the end of the season to kind of give everyone hope for maybe another playoff push. But immediately following that, I mean, hell, the game immediately following that jersey retirement was good, and then it was a disaster. Then there were some games afterwards that continued that disaster. Again, they turned it on late in the season, but we said at the time this is the last big thing that's going to happen this season. Turned out to be the year. But yeah, overall, it's that whole weekend, essentially, from him showing up at the practice, practicing with the team. Then obviously the whole jersey retirement moment, the former Penguins on hand, the jersey retirement itself, his speech, the going out for practice, for warmups. I mean, it was all just, and then he was here the whole weekend. He took the rooms away from Drake, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It was quite a fun weekend for Jaromir Jagr and the Penguins, and definitely the highlight of 2024 as a whole, because really what else, I mean, we have a few here, but what else sticks out like that? Not much.
Yeah, for a team that didn't make the playoffs, for a team that outside of 2 winning stretches, that one you mentioned already, which was the last 12 to 13 games of last season and the last 12 to 15 games of the calendar year, outside of that, there hasn't been a whole lot to call home about. Now, what there has been is a lot of milestones. So that's what's going to be in a lot of these options. So how would you rank these moments? Because outside of Jagr, we want to find what the best on-ice moment was for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I got 3 here, and if I missed any, or what, you can feel free to tell me. And if you're a listener, feel free to drop it in the comment section below, and we'll talk about it next Tuesday. But I got 3 here, and I think that I have mine picked out, and we'll see if you agree. First and foremost, the only one from last season that I'm putting in this list, April 11th, 2024, Erik Karlsson keeps the Penguins' playoff hopes alive in overtime to take down the Detroit Red Wings. Not only did that get them a win over a team that they were battling, but for the time being, it put them into a playoff spot, and it gave them control of their own destiny. Now, we know how that played out. We know that they ended up botching it, but for the time being, Erik Karlsson put the Penguins in the driver's seat for a playoff spot in 2024. That was by far, to me, his best moment in year 1 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not to mention the fact that Crosby had the primary assist, and that was his 1,000th in his career. So Karlsson keeps playoff hopes alive in OT. That is 1. 2, another option here, Evgeni Malkin scores his 500th goal, a massive milestone for any NHL player. That happened on October 16th of 2024. Of course, Sidney Crosby has the only assist on that goal. Sid also picked up his 1,600th point in that same game, and the Penguins win in overtime off of Crosby's first goal of this season. But a great moment for Evgeni Malkin early as he pots his 500th goal. And the last moment I'll throw out there is one that happened less than a week ago. Sidney Crosby passes Mario Lemieux for the Penguins' all-time record in assists. December 29th, 2024. Waited until the last home game of the year. Like we mentioned on the last episode, Sid has a flair for the dramatic, but he now sits at 1,035 assists, picking up a secondary on Drew O'Connor's power play goal on Tuesday. Anytime you pass Mario Lemieux, it is a special, special moment. I don't think enough was made of that moment, and that's why it is also going to be one of the 3 we picked here. So Karlsson keeps the playoff hopes alive last season. Malkin scores 500, or Crosby passes Lemieux. Horwat, how would you rank these moments? And are there any that I missed?
There's none that you missed that I can think of off the top of my head. Like I said, it was kind of a, I don't want to say lousy year, but it was a year just that was Yager and milestones. One piece that you missed about the Erik Karlsson one is why I want to give that one a bump. That was game 999 for him.
Yeah.
I was trying to, that's what I was, while you were speaking, I was trying to also figure out exactly which game that was because I remember it being right around that 1000th game mark, if not game 1000. It was 999. He sent them off into a huge win over Detroit and then immediately got the 1000th game celebration 2 nights later. So I think that sort of added to the legend of that moment. I think that one deserves a bit more of a bump just because it kept the Penguins alive for the time being. It kept them in the race. And it was just a good moment for himself to then go on and have a great celebration a couple nights later. And I think that, and I get why a lot of people don't give the assists thing as much love as they do because it's assists. I mean, they're only talked about whenever they're at such high numbers, like guys like Mario, guys like Crosby, and I would say I like your order. I just wanted to give the Karlsson thing that little extra bump, just because that sort of added to the magnitude of the moment as well. Just of course, it was him in that moment, and he had a terrible game leading up to that too, didn't he?
Oh yeah, I believe he was the reason for 2 goals in the third period. 2 Detroit goals. Let me just say that. Let me clarify there.
It was a very typical Erik Karlsson game, a 6-5 final. As I'm looking at Jeff Carter scored a shorthanded goal that game. Now that I'm thinking about it and remembering that game, that was a nuts affair.
It was one of a couple crazy games that happened late last season, and that's when I was looking for these moments. I was like, which games have a standout moment? And that Karlsson one, I think, was the one that comes top of mind. But the Tampa Bay win on home ice during that stretch was huge. The road win against the Rangers was massive in a year where they were going on to win the President's Trophy. The win at Prudential Center the following game was absolutely massive. I mean, you can also add on the win that they had in Washington. I was there in person. Had everybody believing, okay, this team is for real. There were a lot of big wins. There were a lot of great games late last season, but I think it all culminated with Karlsson and in the waning weeks of the season, putting them in the driver's seat. And that's why that matched with overtime, matched with just the celebration too. You can't mistake him dropping to his knees and almost looking like, finally, I made my stamp on this fan base. They finally might accept me. Now, again, we saw what happened following that. Yeah. They immediately fell out of the playoff race and then lost in a meaningless game to the Islanders. But that was a huge moment for Karlsson.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it's one of the few games that I can vividly remember as well. Like I said, the Jeff Carter shorthanded goal early in the third period to put the Penguins up by 2, by the way. Yeah, that was later blown. Like I said, Alex Nedeljkovic did not really steal games toward the end of the year. I can remember Jeff Hathor looking to me after every Lucas Raymond goal. The kid's good. He scored 3 that game.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. And Erik Karlsson capping it off in game 999 and adding to that sort of magnitude. Zach Aston-Reese took a penalty that game, by the way, for the Detroit Red Wings. That dude has gotten around. I thought there was more to it. It's very reminiscent of that Evgeni Malkin goal against the Capitals in 2023. Mm-hmm. The Penguins fighting for the playoff spot then, trying to do everything they can to keep them in. Malkin scores that huge goal to keep them in that race and has that big celebration that we all remember. It felt like that. It felt like those late season moments that the Penguins were in desperate need of. And again, the overall outcome, not as memorable and definitely less fun than a playoff berth, but these are quite the moments to remember. Jeff Petrie also scored for the Red Wings this game. I can't get over this score sheet.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you've been filibustering here to not give a ranking. How would you rank these 3? I've let you filibuster long enough. What is the number 1? What is the number 2? Where do you rank these guys?
I briefly said I like your ranking, and I think I'm going to hold to it. Like Karlsson at 3, just because it didn't sort of culminate into more. Was it the Malkin? Yeah, Malkin's 500th goal is 2. And then, obviously Crosby's milestone assist as number one, just because, again, you're right, that doesn't get enough love. It doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah.
I mean, you get it. It's assists, but also, like we said, Mario Lemieux put up those numbers in about 600 games.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you pass Lemieux, that's
Yeah.
to me, that's number one. Like Crosby passing Lemieux, just say that. It doesn't matter what follows it. That immediately should go at the top of the list. If he passes him in anything. So Crosby passing Lemieux to me is number one. I would say Karlsson is probably number two over Malkin. I understand 500 is a huge, huge milestone when it comes to goal scoring. And almost everybody, I think it's like 97%, 98% of players that reach 500 goals also reach Toronto and the Hockey Hall of Fame. Not that it wasn't already a foregone conclusion for Malkin, but it just means more when the playoffs are on the line. And for that, I'm giving it to Karlsson. Also because Malkin scored that in the first period of a game that ended up going absolutely haywire. Following that, they ended up winning that one, I believe, 6-5 as well on home ice. But Karlsson, to put the Pens in the driver's seat, I'll put that at number two, and Crosby obviously will be at number one. So let us know in the comments section what you have